What if, um, what if magic wasn't this, like, mystical gift, but actually a predatory loan?
Right. Yeah.
Like, what if casting a spell required an extreme empathetic blood transfusion? And the aristocratic vampires ruling the city were actually survivors of a crashed alien ship.
I mean, it totally throws out every comfortable fantasy trope we have, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely.
You aren't just dealing with wizards waving wands in a castle. You're looking at a heavily codified society built on the ruins of high technology, and it's bound by these incredibly strict physical laws of symbiosis.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking a really phenomenal excerpt from a book called San Vitae, The Awakening by D.P. Kirk.
Yes, specifically focusing on a chapter titled Unexpected Life.
Exactly. And our mission today is to essentially act as your ultimate reader's guide to this incredibly dense universe. We're going to review the quality of the storytelling, break down the mechanics of the lore, and honestly show you exactly why this book deserves to be at the absolute top of your reading list.
So, to ground us in the narrative, we enter the story through the eyes of a young orphan named Kurien.
Poor kid.
Yeah, really. He has just barely survived this brutal, unforgiving training encounter. And through his perspective, we are immediately thrust into a really disorienting world that's divided into two distinct classes.
Right, the San and the Sans.
Exactly. The San Vitae, who are the empowered beings who wield magic, and the Sans Vitae, the unempowered humans, who basically serve as their biological donors.
And if you're listening to this and thinking, well, a magical ruling class and a non-magical underclass, I've heard this setup before.
Hmm.
The author takes that expectation and just completely subverts it. Because to understand the macro-level politics of this world, which get massive later on, by the way.
Oh, huge.
Yeah, we first have to understand the mechanic of the magic system itself. It is shockingly intimate.
The macropolitics only makes sense if you understand the microbiology. The chapter opens with Kurien lying on a bed, and he's being treated for his wounds by a young Sans woman. She's creating a healing poultice, but, she isn't grinding up herbs.
No, it's way more intense than that.
She uses white woven gauze, and she soaks it in a small glass goblet that she actually fills with her own blood, her own vitae.
Yeah, through a clear, narrow tube. It is so visceral.
Yeah.
She places this blood-infused gauze directly onto his semi-cauterized wounds. But the mechanics of how she gets his body to accept her blood is what really caught my attention.
Because it's not a potion.
Right. In most stories, you drink a potion and boom, you're cured.
Yeah.
Here, the donor actually has to guide the biological integration.
She uses a very specific breathing technique to make it happen. The text describes it as this transcendent murmur, like a purring vibrato.
A purring vibrato.
Yeah, she inhales through her nose and exhales through her mouth, and the sound physically morphs to resemble the purr of a great cat.
Let's actually explore how that works mechanically. Like, why purring?
Well, it really comes down to biological resonance. Think about it. If you introduce a foreign, magically charged fluid into a battered, traumatized system, the host body is naturally going to reject it.
Right, it'll trigger an immune response.
Exactly. So the donor uses this purring sound to create a physical vibration. She takes Kurien's hand, places it over the gauze on his chest, and sends that vibration coursing down his arm.
Oh, wow.
And Kurien has to focus his will and actively match her breathing, basically replicating the mantra.
So she's basically using sound waves to force their biological rhythms into harmony.
Yeah.
Like syncing up two metronomes so his body is tricked into accepting her vitae instead of fighting it.
It's a profound display of empathy, really. The magic system demands a physical toll, a literal giving of oneself to sustain another.
It's basically an extreme empathetic blood transfusion.
Yeah, and it establishes the core thematic foundation of the entire book, that symbiotic, often sacrificial relationship between the powerful and the vulnerable.
Now, from a strictly narrative standpoint, I do have to point out the pacing in this opening scene is quite slow.
It takes its time.
It does. We spend a significant amount of time just watching someone breathe and apply bloody gauze. But Kirk's writing completely compensates for the slow pace with incredible sensory texture.
The details really ground you.
Yes. Even later in the chapter, Kurien notes the exact scent of someone's skin. It's lilacs, lilies, and the touch of honey cream oil.
That level of sensory immersion makes this bizarre biological magic system feel undeniably real to the reader.
For sure. And that intimate biological exchange we see in the bedroom isn't just a medical necessity.
No, not at all.
It is the foundation of a global, legally mandated treaty, which we discover through a wonderfully timed flashback.
The jump cut is great.
Yeah, we jump from the quiet, tense healing room straight into a noisy, crowded alleyway. Kurien and his friend, this inquisitive, highly sarcastic teenager named Tippin, are spying on a political gathering.
Right, they're looking at Myasuchi.
Exactly. The elegant, incredibly powerful new Covenness of Aranthi. And she's just standing in the center of this crowd.
And as the boys spy on her, they get into this whispered argument that effectively serves as our reader's guide to the larger Santerrie history.
It's basically an info dump, but in disguise.
Kind of, yeah. They start debating the origins of the Vitae, who are essentially the first, oldest, and most powerful of all the San Vitae. And Myasuchi is rumored to be a direct descendant of one.
This argument, by the way, is where my brain completely short-circuited.
Oh, with the quote.
Yes. Kurien's trying to show off to Tippin, so he starts paraphrasing a famous passage from their governing text, the Diedrith. He claims the Vitae emerged from the void, from, and I quote, the scar in the heavens above, riding cauldrons of brilliant fire.
It's such a striking image.
I read that and I was like, wait a minute. Cauldrons of fire falling from a scar in the sky. Are we reading a high fantasy novel, or is this actually a post-apocalyptic sci-fi story?
The genre blending is brilliant. I mean, a scar in the heavens and cauldrons of fire heavily imply a tear in the atmosphere and advanced spacecraft crashing to Earth.
Like an alien ship or something.
Yeah, and the text mentions that these Vitae arrived to a world suffering from massive chaos, starvation, and the ravages of the wastes following a cataclysm.
So these vampiric magical overlords might actually be surviving aliens or like genetically modified beings from a crashed starship.
Right.
It completely reframes how you look at every spell cast in the book. It's not ancient mysticism. It's misunderstood biology from a highly advanced civilization.
Exactly. They brought their mastery of Vitae disciplines to help humanity survive the post-cataclysmic wastes, and they unified the fractured human clans under a single doctrine.
The Diedrith Accord.
Right, the Accord. That formally established the covenant between the empowered San and the unempowered Sans, legally binding them into that symbiotic relationship we saw in the healing room.
I do have a critique on how Kirk delivers this massive piece of lore, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you look at it structurally, it borders heavily on an info dump.
I can see that.
You have two teenage street orphans basically reciting historical textbooks at each other in an alleyway. Like, as you know, the Diedrith Accord did this. It feels just a bit clunky.
I see the structural critique, but consider the psychological driver behind the dialogue. It isn't just pure exposition. It's driven by character ego.
Okay, fair.
Tippin is acting condescending, and Kurien is intensely insecure. So Kurien starts rattling off academic history, specifically to prove he isn't an idiot. Kirk masks the encyclopedia entry inside a very relatable teenage pissing contest of who knows more.
Well, we've all weaponized trivia to win an argument, so that's a fair defense.
Right.
Definitely establishes their dynamic. But knowing that massive cataclysmic history only matters because it explains why Myasuchi is so important, and the stakes go from geopolitical to deeply emotionally personal in seconds.
Because of the barrel?
Yes. The transition from political tension to physical comedy is so jarring in the best way. Kurien is leaning so far over a rainwater barrel to get a good look at her.
And Tippin just pushes off it.
Yeah, Tippin pushes off the barrel. Kurien completely loses his balance, and he falls headfirst into the water with a massive splash.
It's so bad.
He soaks himself and throws murky water all over Myasuchi's pristine white gown and the well-dressed Santerrie councilman. It is the ultimate nightmare scenario for a teenager with a crush.
Truly.
He is dripping wet, coughing, and his councilmen are absolutely disgusted with him. But Myasuchi walks right up to the barrel.
She leans over her glasses, discreetly winks at him,
The wink is great.
kisses his bleeding brow, and turns to the councilman to declare, "I will have this one." She chooses this dripping wet sans street rubbish to be her conscript.
Which is a huge deal. Because Myasuchi signed the Diedrith Accord, she is legally forbidden from taking direct physical action in the world.
She needs a conscript to be her physical proxy.
Exactly. And the councilmen are appalled. They offer her highly trained youth, proper warriors with diverse disciplines. But she insists on Kurien, which begs the question, why pick a scrawny orphan over a trained bodyguard?
Well, that question leads us right into the mindscape sequence. Myasuchi takes Kurien's hand and presses it directly to her chest.
Just right in front of everyone.
Yeah. And through her aura, their minds link, and Kurien's consciousness travels down into her soul.
And it is not a welcoming place.
Not at all.
He perceives her inner core as a space guarded by cold, black steel walls encrusted with serrated blades. It is this pulsing, desperate defense mechanism trying to contain an immense amorphic cloud of grief.
It tells you so much about her daily reality before she even speaks a word. And lurking beneath all that grief, he senses something far worse.
The demon.
Yes, the demon. This introduces us to the concept of Vitae madness, which is the inescapable threat hanging over every single San Vitae.
And the demon isn't like a guy with horns holding a pitchfork. It isn't malicious.
Yeah.
The text describes it as a hollow thing of total indifference.
If a San Vitae uses their power without the grounding support of a covenant, without a sans donor absorbing some of the biological and mental toll, the demon begins to consume them. It's just the nature of the biological exchange.
You know, this concept made me think of predatory high-interest debt.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. Like if you take out a massive payday loan, the bank doesn't hate you. The interest rate doesn't have a personal vendetta against you.
Just numbers.
It is just an indifferent mathematical force that is inevitably going to extract its payment over time until you are bankrupt.
The demon is a spiritual creditor. It just waits patiently for the San Vitae to overextend themselves, and then it forecloses on their mind and soul.
That analogy perfectly explains the role of the conscript and the donor. They are the collateral.
They're the support system paying down that spiritual interest so the San Vitae doesn't succumb to madness. When Kurien is inside her mind, he feels the sheer crushing weight of her isolation. She's surrounded by political sharks fighting off mental bankruptcy every single day.
Which brings us to the emotional core of the book. Kurien realizes he wasn't chosen because he has some hidden magical destiny, or because he's a secret badass.
Nope.
He was chosen because his own desperate, lonely need to be wanted mirrored Myasuchi's desperate need for an anchor. As an orphan with no family, he just wanted to be needed wholly and completely by another person.
And she felt the sincerity of his heart and knew she could trust him. It is a beautiful, tragic symmetry. She has immense geopolitical power, but is incredibly fragile mentally.
And he has absolutely no societal power, but offers a profound, unshakable emotional devotion.
Exactly.
But of course, that emotional devotion won't stop an assassin's blade. If Kurien is going to be the physical shield for a woman targeted by every political faction in the city, he has to become lethal.
Which brings us to his master, Gossith.
Yes, enter Gossith.
Gossith snaps us out of the flashback and right back to the brutal reality of the present. He's an aloof, heavily scarred warrior carrying deep regrets.
He's terrifying.
And when he catches Kurien acting tenderly toward the exhausted donor girl from the healing room, Gossith decides Kurien needs a harsh reality check.
He tells Kurien a story from before the Diedrith Accord. Before civilization was established, the Sands were completely defenseless, they couldn't use Vitae, and they were hunted by San, who had been corrupted by the demon.
Gossith implies that he himself lost someone to this dynamic. A Sans he loved who sacrificed herself to keep him from deteriorating into madness.
Oh, man.
He uses this brutal history to outline the very real, very physical external threats Kurien will face outside the Santerrie Council, starting with the Anarch clans.
Right, because Myasuchi used to be the head of one of these Anarch clans. Who exactly are they?
They're the descendants of groups who refused to bend the knee to the Santerrie after the cataclysm. They value total independence and self-governance over the security of the Accord.
So they view the Santerrie as oppressive overlords.
Basically, yeah. So, by signing the treaty, Myasuchi essentially defected, making her a massive target to her former allies who view her as a traitor.
So Kurien has to protect her from political rebels on one side. But on the other side, you have an even more terrifying faction, the Humanis La Luna.
Now, to be clear, we are just outlining their in-world ideology here to understand the plot.
Absolutely, just reporting on the lore.
The Humanis are pure-blood zealots. Their ideology centers on the belief that Vitae magic is an inherent curse upon the earth. They seek to cleanse the world of anyone empowered by it, advocating for a society entirely free of magic or Vitae influence.
Gossith points out the gaping hole in their logic, though. He notes that there probably aren't enough actual people entirely free of Vitae to fill a single church.
Right.
Which means the Humanis ranks are likely filled with the very sans Vitae their cult claims to want to cleanse from the world. It's a hypocritical crusade.
But their hypocrisy doesn't make them less dangerous.
Oh, not at all.
Especially because of their weaponry. The Divitae technology.
This is so cool.
Gossith reveals that the Humanis use incredibly advanced anti-magic weapons. The most powerful of these devices have built-in limiters that physically reject anyone with active Vitae in their system.
Which made me wonder, how does an anti-magic gun even function in a fantasy setting? And it loops right back to the sci-fi origins we discussed earlier.
Gossett suspects this Devite tech didn't originate with the Humanis at all. He believes it came through the heavens scar with those cauldrons of fire during the cataclysm.
The spaceship tech.
Yes, it is ancient, highly advanced technology designed specifically to neutralize biological anomalies. In this case, the magic of the San Vitae. If you have magic in your blood, the weapon simply refuses to fire for you.
And it isn't just weapons. Gossett asks Kurien if he's ever ridden a forged horse. A mechanical, technological horse seamlessly blended into a society that uses blood magic.
The juxtaposition is incredible.
It really is, and it shows Gossett's pure pragmatism. He tells Kurien to use whatever tools he can find, magical, technological, or just cold steel to survive.
You weren't just fighting wizards, you were fighting zealots, armed with ancient sci-fi weaponry. It adds an incredibly gritty, survivalist tone to the narrative. The threats are relentless.
Which perfectly sets up the chilling final image of the chapter. Gossett leads Kurien out of the barracks, past the courtyard, and out into the freezing snow on the edge of a cliff.
Just leaves him there.
He tells Kurien to sit and meditate out there in the elements all night. And if he is still alive tomorrow morning...
The real training begins.
Yeah, the real training begins. It is a phenomenal cliffhanger that completely resets the stakes. Kurien survived his wounds, he bonded with the Covenness, but now he just has to survive the raw environment and his own master to earn the right to protect her.
It's a brutal start.
It is. If you're wondering why San Vitae, The Awakening needs to be the next book you pick up. It's because Kirk delivers a masterclass in genre blending. It is a world where advanced anti-magic technology collides with a desperate biological magic system. But it never gets lost in its own lore. Everything is anchored by a deeply vulnerable, emotional core to lonely people trying to survive each other's worlds.
The world building is deeply compelling. As we wrap up this deep dive, consider this final thought. The entire society of the Santerrie justifies its hierarchy on the premise that the powerful San protect the weak Sans.
It's the classic excuse of any ruling class, really.
But look at Myasuchi. She is teetering on the edge of the Vitae madness, desperately relying on a completely unempowered street orphan just to keep her own mind from fracturing.
Yeah.
Who is truly the vulnerable one in this dynamic? It makes you wonder how often the massive institutions of ultimate power in our own world are entirely propped up, both physically and emotionally, by the very people at the bottom they claim to be protecting.
That completely recontextualizes that biological transaction. When the powerful are just one missed payment away from going mentally bankrupt. Maybe that extreme blood transfusion isn't a gift from the strong. Maybe it's just the desperate gasp of a society trying to survive its own terminal diagnosis.